Hello and welcome to day 12 of my alternative spring tour. Today I bring you a reading from a section in my book called Home. It's split into 3 pieces: Hometown, London Town and Kent. I'm going to open with a short passage from Hometown about a tennis club where I spent a lot of time when I was a child and a teenager. The Grange. Thwack, the smack of a tennis racket against a ball, the softly mown grass, the white painted lines, the dust-trodden patches, the taut, finely wound net, measuring stick or racket head, struggles around the court, lolloping back and forth, some with an eye, some with the legs, the Tyrolean-style pavilion, and yet so very English, square wooden tables, directors' chairs all round, tea urns, cups and saucers, homemade cakes, whose turn to bake this week, cucumber sandwiches on white, egg and cress and fish paste on brown, no granary then, no crusts, all pause for tea, 15 all, time to rest. 6 o'clock comes, the drinks are poured, the sun sets, play continues. Until the dew appears, you give of your best. Time to shower, time to reflect. Water tumbles slowly. Daddy Longlegs escape their nests, ready for an evening of flying into lamplight. Mine's a shandy for now, bag of salt and shaken crisps. Fish and chips will come later, a game of pontoon, a test. Matchboxes adorn the walls, Vimto Coke, a Bass beer poured, the best. Dawn rises, hedgehogs stuck in the netting, rollers going back and forth, water being sprayed. Then the hour comes around again. The first cars arrive, then by foot. By 3 o'clock the courts are full. The weekend is underway. Anyone for tennis? Uncle Pom-Pom with his basket full of booze, Auntie with her fags, Died raking his radishes, another auntie feeling chilly. Some in long trousers, some frilly knickers, all whites without question, etiquette unspoken. Green Flash, Slazenger, Max Ply Dunlop. What's the tension of your gut? The key's behind the tap if you get there early. Games of football on Friday nights, junior night, all the talent lined up, obedient rows, keen, rackets to attention. The home I grew up in was one I loved very much, number 6 St Paul's Square, Burton-upon-Trent, commonly known as number 6. This was a home where I built dens out of walk-in broom cupboards, where an uncle took his own life in our garage, where we played marbles in the backyard and golf on the putting lawn at the front, where extended family who lived nearby gathered often, where our bright yellow front door was always open to visitors, where I had my first pets and buried them in my own little patch of the garden, my first hamster buried by mistake when we didn't realise that they went into hibernation, my second and rather aggressive one mysteriously managing to escape from a locked cage, prompting a full-scale search of the house. This house was the source of endless games, large enough and with so many rooms that sardines was heaven sent, a rabbit warren of nooks to hide away in, making it a real adventure trying to locate each other. We played quizzes in the power cuts of the 1970s. My grandmother, 9, had held regular bridge games in her lounge. Pristinely cut sandwiches, ice buns and eclairs were served, and if we were well behaved, we were allowed to indulge too. We didn't share the strong gin and its, Italian vermouth, they also drank. When I think of those today, I marvel at their potency and recall the best silver and china tea service, gin-infused voices, plumes of smoke, blue rinses, concentrated looks, and wicked women's laughter. Nine's kitchen was also a generous source of large chunks of white floury bread with liberal dollops of unsalted butter. One afternoon, it was the scene of some excitement when a cousin went through to put the kettle on, only to be confronted by a cloth-capped stranger holding a swag bag over his shoulder. He fled, spilling his silver haul as he went. There is cinematic evidence of me as a small child directing traffic on the road outside in my newly acquired policeman's outfit. When I was 10, I had a more serious experience on the same patch of road. I was on my bike and took a corner with my hands in the air instead of on the handlebars. Instead of a smooth arrival onto the drive, I slammed into an iron signpost. My blooded fingerprints remained there for many years to follow. And then, most of the good times at number 6 were over. Aged 13, my parents' marriage had ended. I moved with my father and 2 sisters to his new home across the river, to the other side of town. It was indeed new, in every sense. I skipped to several years later, to 1978, and it was finally time to spread my wings and head off to a very different world. I went off to university. I went off to London town. London town. So essentially you are homeless. The year was 1995 and I was visiting my new GP to register. I was living in Brixton, having moved there to be nearer to my girlfriend of a few months, Marg. I had fled South Norwood, my home of 5 years, after a traumatic breakup. Arriving in Brixton, where I would remain for 10 years, the GP's words, whilst blunt, confronted me with my reality. She was right to a certain extent. I have never regarded myself as homeless, though. I feel that would be doing a disservice to people who live on the streets or seek refuge in shelters. I have always been fortunate enough to have a roof over my head, even if I've been a little nomadic at times. The early Brixton months were spent lodging with Marg, whilst I found my feet before renting my own small flat nearby. That was on Brixton Hill, and being the busy thoroughfare that it is, I got coated in soot every time I opened the window. But it was the first place that I could call mine. Somewhere I lived without family, without flatmates, without a partner, making me truly independent. I could so easily have stayed with Marg, but our relationship was in its infancy. This being her first relationship with a woman, she wasn't quite ready to cohabit, and I had a lot of healing and reflecting to do. I felt that I had always run from one romantic situation into another and wanted to break that habit. Despite using Marg's utility room facilities, I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. At 36, many people are established, married, have become parents and are determinedly settled. My years of being a butterfly were perhaps now behind me. My parents had stood in my father's kitchen when I was about 15 or 16. I was seated at the table. "What are we going to do with her?" my mother had asked. "She can't be a butterfly all of her life. She needs stability." I don't recall my father's response, nor any reaction of my own, but butterfly was certainly an analogy that remained with me, one I found appropriate and that seemed to suit me more as the years passed. In all the years I lived in London, I moved around a lot, seemingly rootless, in and out of relationships that lasted some time, but which took me in and out of different homes. Had my wings eventually been clipped? My arrival in London in 1978 had been a dream come true. Despite it taking a year longer than anticipated, it was to be my home for 25 years. A relationship so deep that once on a train journey coming home to Kent, I was prompted to make a note in my phone that as much as I love Kent, I will always be in love with London. This prompted me to write a song about this special relationship called "You Do Me Good." After 2 years, Marg and I decided to buy our first home together, off Brixton Hill around the corner in Hayter Road. A chunky, solid, safe and stylish terraced house with a small but beautifully formed walled garden which we filled with fig and banana trees, bamboos and other glorious architectural plants. We have a photograph of my stepfather sitting underneath the banana tree with fruit bearing down on him, looking rather regal, sheltering him from the sunshine. We held many rather legendary parties in Hayter Road for friends and workmates, vodka-soaked melons exploding over the pavement, the sound of workmates' hysterical laughter, scooter men booked to deliver friends and their cars home at the end of long, fun-filled evenings, deciding to bleed radiators in our dining room minutes before 10 friends arrived for 10 courses of deliciousness on Millennium Night. I broke my ankle badly here when I careered down the stairs with no shoes and socks on. It was the end of a murder mystery night organised for my team at work. After the accident, Marg left trays of wonderfully imaginative and loving food as I remained stranded as the one-legged wonder on the first floor. I got locked out one morning in my black and white striped silk pyjamas, only to have a Polish builder use a ladder to somehow climb in through a small opening in our bathroom window to let me back in. I acquired my pride and joy of a Daihatsu Copen here only months before leaving, and I drove the 5 miles to work in the city each day in it, taking me no less than an hour and a half each way to do so. And we acquired a couple of beloved 2-year-old feline brothers here. They then journeyed with us to our new but very ramshackle old home in the Kent countryside, where they remained with us into their 20s and to a new and very different life for us all. So to my final part of this reading, Kent. Sitting up in bed, feeling slightly under the weather, and because I focus well there, I begin to write. A window is open, and I can hear birds singing outside. The day is murky, that term that explains the slightly damp atmosphere following 2 days of rain. Autumn is approaching, but I hope that some late summer sun will brighten the day. The temperatures are still mild, and we venture towards the fire for evening comfort rather than necessity. Our bedroom is white. It is square. Our bed sits tidily in the middle of the wall. It seems to be holding court. 2 doors, one of them opens onto the landing, the other into a small walk-in wardrobe. From the bed, I can see a toy monkey hanging on the door to the landing. It makes me chuckle because the previous night Marg said it looked like Jesus hanging on the cross and was making her uncomfortable. It hangs alongside several strands of shiny beads. I look straight ahead from behind my cosy white duvet towards our dressing table, black lacquer supporting an ornate glass mirror, home to more baubles and several medals recognising Marg's triathlon exploits. Bottles of Chanel perfume, body lotion and shower gel, bottles of suntan lotion, nail varnish, and a book about Man Ray in Paris. Looking upwards and to the left are 2 artworks that look quite alike. One we bought many years ago on a visit to Kent. It is by Katie Sacchi with the inscription, "Looking so beautiful, the tide will come back in for more." The other is a beautiful etching with gold leaf entitled "Lines from San Carlo al Corso" of that church by Mark Pulsford. They give me immense pleasure. I have the radio on and stop writing for 15 minutes to listen to a reading from In My Mind's Eye by Jan Morris. I've been a fan of Jan Morris since I read her book Conundrum when I was a teenager, a fabulous writer and a fascinating and truly admirable human being. A couple of years ago, when visiting my father in Crickeath, North Wales, I popped into the local post office to pick up some pins for a corkboard I'd bought him. I turned around whilst browsing the stationery and spotted Jan Morris. I thought for a moment and then, not wanting the opportunity to pass me by, took a deep breath and said, "Please excuse me, but I just wanted to say hello and how much I've always admired you." "Why, thank you so much," she said, then added charmingly, "That's very kind. I do hope we'll meet again." I read subsequently that for Jan, kindness and marmalade are two of the most important things in life, and from our brief encounter, I can certainly say that she practiced the former. I have spent a lot of time in this pleasingly uplifting, airy room over the last 8 years. I'm hoping the current malaise is simply a slight seasonal lurgy. My natural way would be to ignore it and carry on, and then end up in bed anyway. But now I reluctantly give in. I am learning that the sooner I give in, shake off a lurgy, or allow my natural state to take its course, the sooner I will be back on my feet, recovered, with batteries restored. Through the window, I can see trees. Without lifting myself up, only trees. Below the low window is a burnished brown radiator. I commissioned all the radiators when we renovated and refurbished the house 13 years ago. On the wall above it are a pair of rectangular wall lights, which I spray painted in antique gold. I like a can of spray paint. In either corner, alongside the bedhead behind me, are Lloyd loom armchairs in their original gold condition, untouched by me, bedecked in cast-off clothing. On one is a teddy bear bearing the hallmarks of being as old as I am, and very originally named Teddy. I've left many things behind as I've made my way through life, but Teddy has stayed with me. To the left of the dressing table, a pair of Lloyd loom laundry baskets. Gold satin and brown fur cushions are sprinkled around the room. Physical possessions are an interesting part of our lives. You can glean so much about people who live in a home by wandering through it. All the things that I have around me bring me comfort and make me happy. I reflect on a drive home a few weeks previously. I had been away for 10 days. I alternated between singing along to a Glenn Campbell playlist and listening to Spurs thrash Fulham on the radio. But regardless of that, I felt glad because I was going home and remembered our move to Kent 14 years ago. The day we moved to Kent was a very hot August day. I led the advance guard in my little beeper, my Daihatsu Copen, acquired just a few months before. A convertible, when the roof had folded neatly into the boot, there was no room for luggage. Marg was bringing up the rear carrying two very disgruntled cats, Earl and Bertie, who were in their cages on the back seat of her Saab. I arrived first and sat on a bench admiring our new home, or ruin as it was at that time. Eventually the removal men joined me, and beer and fags in hand, we waited for Marg to arrive. Eventually Marg and the cats appeared, on top of a breakdown truck. It had not been fun for Marg, but we were united again, and with so much to look forward to. That evening, adopting the countryside ways and slower pace of life, we sat with old friends, feet up and glasses in hand, surveying what could only loosely be termed a garden at that stage. Nevertheless, it was magnificent, and bats swooped over our heads as we celebrated the day. I had left a very good job, we had left a very good home, we had left London. I had left the familiarity of everything I had known, a home of 8 years, a company of 8 years, and a city of a quarter of a century. Sometimes you take a deep breath and do things. Overthinking may mean you don't do them. I cast no judgment on those choices, but it doesn't tend to be my way. I can be an overthinker, a ruminator, a worrier, but I also have a fierce desire to gamble and step outside my comfort zone. Sometimes those two things clash. I don't know why I have this drive to do new things, but I'm sure I would have perhaps been a healthier and possibly at times happier person if it wasn't there. We had been very measured when considering the move, even spending a week in a local hotel, but this was certainly a very big change, and we were quite naive in many ways. But naivety is sometimes necessary to enable change. It is sometimes not possible to be otherwise. That is one of the beauties of adventure. However much you plan and prepare and think you've covered everything, these are likely to be things you just could not have anticipated. And so we stepped into the slightly unknown. This home has been a place of celebration and a refuge. When my health deteriorated in 2010 and I was diagnosed with ME, little did we know to what extent. Requiring solitude, peace and nature, it was the best place I could find myself. The house is in need of some restoration now. After 14 years, we are moving through it slowly, giving it the TLC it needs and deserves. At some stage, not too far away, it will be time to allow someone else to tend to it and relish it in the way that we have. It will be time for us to move on to pastures new. It will be time to revel in the experiences that a new home can bring us for the next chapter of our lives. What follows is a short recording of the Dawn Chorus, recorded 2 days ago on May the 3rd at 4:30 in the morning from our bedroom with the windows open. I hope you enjoy that too. Thank you very much.